are continuing our series talking about the man who would be king. And I've got something today that's really near and dear to my heart. I've been waiting for a while to share this with you. And my hope and my prayer today is not that I would just give you some information, but that I would impart to you something that has been transformational and life-changing and inspiring in my own life. It's made all the difference in the world. And we pick up the story in 1 Samuel chapter 18. David comes off the battlefield and he is summoned by King Saul and by the general of the Israeli army. And they want to know how did he get to be this way? Who's his daddy? How did you get to be this way? And it says in 1 Samuel 18:1, as soon as he, meaning David, had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Verse 3, then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. So David is having this conversation with the king's cabinet, and there's this prince who's listening, who's surrounding the king and surrounding David. There's some of the leaders of the army, and there is the young leader named Jonathan, who's the prince next in line to be king, Saul's oldest son. And he's so impressed by David's speech, by the way he carries himself, by the way he shows respect for the leaders, by his heart, by his humility, that he is so taken by him, and he loves him as himself, and he extends a covenant friendship to him. Now, this story has inspired some of the greatest friendships in the history of the world, have been inspired. Even people that don't know Jesus, don't even know what the gospel is, know about this wonderful friendship between Jonathan and David. Today, I'd like us to discuss Jonathan, Michal, and David, covenant friendships. Okay, covenant friendships. So as far as we know, Saul is about 57 years old. Jonathan, who's Saul's oldest son, is about 30 years old. And David is about 16 or 17 years old. What does that mean? There's about a 13 or 14 year age gap between Jonathan and David. And Jonathan, we know, is married. He's already has at least one child, maybe a couple. David is a teen. Maybe he's still going through puberty. We're not sure, but he's really still pretty young. And he's still dealing with the acne thing. So we got two people at two very different places in life, in their own personal lives, yet they're brought together. Now, one of the first things I want to say about this is that God knew what David needed more than David knew what he needed. If you would have polled David and asked him after the battle, what do you need right now? He would have said, I need to post this on Facebook, okay? I need a social media agent to help me with all of the huge props that I am getting right now. I'm going to need a media director, or I'm going to need some rest, or I'm going to need to get back into the classroom and study more about military stratagems. But the one thing that David probably would have never said in that moment was, I need a covenant close friend in my life. And the reality is that you and I, we have needs, but a lot of times we don't even know what those needs are. We know that there's something missing. We know there's a gaping hole in our lives in some way, and we try to fill it. Most people try to fill it with money, or they try to fill it with social media, or they try to fill it, excuse me, hon? They try to fill it with their career and with work. But what happens is, see, my wife, she speaks out loud, and when she says something, I'm always listening. So yeah, there's two preaching here. I might be up here, but she's speaking as well. Yeah. So I'm always listening. There's always something good she's going to be saying, so I'm just always listening with one ear. But basically, we think that what we need tends to be more the material things, or it tends to be things that pop culture says. But the stuff that we really need, the deepest needs, tend to be relational. Those are the deepest needs that we have. our relational needs. And a lot of people are like, man, if I just had more money. I'm going to show you today that if you have the right relationships, it will help to pave the way for everything in your life that you will ever need. Okay, so, and I'll show it. I'm going to use statistics from out. I'm going to be sharing a lot of statistics today, and it's not to prove to you that I know what I'm talking about, but I want you to see the status of relationships in our culture and the great need that is out there, and how God, before there was any statistics, before there was any research, before there was any of the data, God showed us how to do this right in life, okay? So, today, we tend to associate friendship with when you're young. So when you're young, you make lots of friends, but then when you progress into adulthood, you leave those youthful friendships behind, okay? But, and I quote, for the ancients, people that lived thousands of years ago, friendship was rare, precious, and hard won. It was a high calling demanding extraordinary quality characters like rooted in virtues like selflessness, honesty, faithfulness, loyalty. When's the last time you ever heard a message about loyalty? Yet this is something that even the ancients, the Greeks, even the Persians, in every history, in every era, it was fabled, the stories of deep friendships between people of the same sex. And it wasn't anything that was sensual. It wasn't anything that was sexual. It was something that was much deeper than that. It was much more than skin deep. It was something that there was a heart knitting that went on between these people. And, the philosopher Aristotle said, in poverty and other misfortunes of life, true friends are a sure refuge. They keep the young out of mischief, they comfort and aid the old in their weaknesses, and they incite those in the prime of life to noble deeds. So, as a matter of fact, in ancient times, and even up to the Renaissance, to have a close friendship, if you were a guy to have a close friendship with another person that you were willing to take a bullet for, that you were willing to run in front of the sword for, that was as highly desired or more desirable than finding a spouse. It was more desirable for them. It was something that they considered to be one of the greatest privileges of their life, even beyond being married to someone, would be to have that close of a friend in their life. Obviously, we've really digressed a long way. Today, what we do is we feel like we graduate from that kind of friendship into just marriage. And at the outset, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but let me say this, is that the best thing, one of the things you need for your marriage relationship the most is you need covenant friendships outside of that marriage. I didn't get a lot of amens. I'll explain that later. It's all right. But William Deresiewicz, in 2009, he wrote an article called Faux Friendship, which of course is false friendship. And I quote from him, having been relegated to our high-tech screens, are our friendships now anything more than a form of a distraction? If we have 768 friends on our computer, in what sense do we have any friends? Facebook isn't the whole of contemporary friendship, but it sure looks a lot like its future. Yet Facebook and Twitter and whatever else we're going to stampede for next are just the latest stages of a long attenuation. They've accelerated the fragmentation of consciousness, but they did not initiate it. In retrospect, looking back, it seems inevitable that once we decide to become friends with everyone, we would forget how to be friends with anyone. We may pride ourselves today on our aptitude for friendship. Friends, after all, are the only people we have left, but it's not clear that we still even know what friendship means. Written 10 years ago. Yet, in light of situations like this and our society maybe going the way of superficial, one-dimensional, flattened friendship, the reality is there are plenty of stats and there's plenty of evidence out there that our generation, that people in the 21st century, that they still regard deep friendship as something that is so incredibly important to them. For instance, a Statista survey recently done just a few years ago revealed that 81% of people aged 16 and over regard loyalty as the most necessary quality of a close friendship. 81%. Over 4/5 of all the people on the planet see loyalty as something that is the highest quality for close friendship. Right behind that was being with them in a time of crisis, okay? And so we all understand that we deeply crave for friendship. But I want to turn this thing on its head for a second. And a lot of times we crave for it and we look for it and we seek for it, but are we giving that ourselves? You know, are we sowing that? Because what you sow, you will what? Reap. And a lot of times we're looking to reap it without first sowing it. And we've got to learn how to sow that kind of virtues of loyalty and being there in crisis and staying close and not giving up and not walking out. It's interesting. U.S. News looked at a Cigna health survey of 20,000 Americans. The health survey, Cigna is a leading health provider, and they were doing a survey about friendship. The question is, why would they do that? Because they were seeing direct connections between people's level of friendship and their kinds of friendships with their health. And another survey that was done similar to this, a study that was done, not a survey, a study that was done, has proven that if you are isolated and lonely, that's the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day to your health. When you're by yourself and you don't have close friends that you can walk with and be around. Here's what they found out. Here's what the Cigna Health found out. Only 27% of Americans feel that they belong to a group of friends. Only 24% report that they can find companionship when they want it and need it. Additionally, 1 in 5 Americans rarely, if ever, feel close to others, and only about half, 53%, have meaningful in-person social interactions with people or family on a regular basis. Today, what's sad is that they did another survey was done, and they found that that people aged 13 to 17, that most of their friends are now online, which is okay. The only problem is that of those people that say most of their friends are online, 80% of them say that they have never met their online friend in person and talked with them in person. So we see this fragmenting and fracturing of friendship and it flattening out. And when it flattens out like that, it affects all of us. Everybody see this? Okay. It's going to get better. Trust me, it's going to get better. Okay. Listen to this. Of the Gen Zers, over half of them say that 10 of the 11 feelings associated with loneliness that they regularly experience. So we're living, interestingly enough, that the older we go from Gen X to Gen Y or the millennials to the Gen Zers, they're finding that they score higher and higher on the loneliness scale than ever. This next generation of people aged 0 to 17 is the loneliest generation ever on planet Earth. Ever on planet Earth, okay? But the good news is that we have the Bible. And the Bible shows us how we can walk out of that isolation and walk out of that loneliness and experience true friendship. Now, getting back to the scripture, let's put it back up there. It says that David, after he slew Goliath, that he finished speaking, and Jonathan was so taken by David's demeanor and the way he presented himself that he made a covenant with him, and it says that his soul was knit with David. Has anybody ever heard of soul ties or soul knitting? Now, a lot of times that's spoken of in a negative way. It's like, you develop a friendship with someone and then they manipulate and they twist to get what they want out of the relationship, and they use you and they abuse you, and then when they're done and they feel like there's nothing left that's good for them that can benefit them, then they walk away. And so a lot of times we're like, we need to just end that, right? We need to cut bait and run from that kind of relationship. We need to cut that soul tie. But I want you to know something, that there are godly biblical soul ties that God establishes in our life. And sometimes it's with the most unique people that you would have not ever scripted in your life. Here's the thing that I want to, if you've lived long enough, you've been burned in a relationship. Someone's let you down, or you perceive that someone's abandoned you, walked out on you, maybe even been betrayed. But I want you to know something. One covenant friendship can wipe out and supersede 20 bad relationships. If you just have one covenant friendship, it can sustain you through all the ups and downs of other relationships that might go bad, that might go south, and that might go through hard times. And David and Jonathan chose wisely. But I want you to know something. They were very different. David was a teen. Jonathan was married probably with kids. Jonathan was from the one tribe. David was from really a different tribe. There was some animosity and some hatred between those tribes. David came from a very lower middle class, kind of a pauper background. Jonathan from a prince background. Very, very different. Yet God joined them together. If you look at the next verse, in verse 4, it says this, "And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David. And he stripped himself of his armor and even his sword and his bow and his belt." When you are in covenant friendship with someone, you will do noble things to demonstrate your friendship with them. You will be amazed at the things that you can even achieve that you didn't think was possible in yourself when you are in covenant friendship. It draws the best out of you. What is going on here? You have the prince, the heir apparent to one of the new rising stars on the horizon of nations, the nation of Israel. And everything seems to be poised in position for Jonathan to take over. He has won some decisive victories. He's made a name for himself. And then this young teenager who we don't know what's going to happen to him 5-10 years. We don't know if he's going to ghost Jonathan. We don't know if David is going to be able to be responsible and take on the responsibility. But Jonathan sees something in him just from one encounter with him that causes him to reach out in close friendship with him. And what Jonathan does is astounding. He takes off his royal robe. This was not Jonathan getting hot and being sweaty from the battle. This was a sign. This was a gesture of, I would rather you be king instead of me. And I am going to do everything in my power and ability to support you and to promote you above myself. Now, in our day and age, we are all about promoting ourselves, whether it's on social media, whether it's in our job. We'll put ourselves in the best light, won't we? We'll put our best foot forward. We will leave out some of the details that we know aren't the best, and we will make sure that we shine, especially on different, social media, to make ourselves look good. But I'll tell you something, Jonathan's like, it's not about me. It's about you. I know you're a teenager. I know that you're not even married. You never even learned how to love a woman, but I am committed to you and to your success. And then he gives him his armor. I got to tell you something. Armor was very rare. To have a sword and a spear and to be able to have all the body armor, that was very rare. Very few people had it. This was something that Jonathan had worked for, that he had fought for to get to this place, and he's willing to give it all up for a friendship that was just starting. That's amazing to me. That's amazing. Jonathan, he said, by giving his armor, he said, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to protect you from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I don't think Jonathan had any idea that one of the enemies would be his very own dad. That David's mortal enemy would be Saul, the king. Why? Because as they were coming back from the battle, the women were dancing and singing and saying, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his 10,000s. And Saul looked with suspicion at David from that day forward. But Jonathan, he knew that this is the kind of person that I want to walk with and be covenant with, and that I want to do life with and even protect. We need close friends. And Jonathan as a prince knew that. Listen, there's a book written by Tom Rath called Vital Friends. Has anybody ever heard of it or seen it? Anybody ever heard of Tom Rath? He wrote the book called Strengths Finder 2.0. He wrote another book more recently called Vital Friends, The People You Can't Afford to Live Without, okay? And he makes the point that if you ask people why they became homeless, why their marriage failed, why they financially declared bankruptcy, why they overeat and are out of shape, they will often say it's because of the poor quality or non-existence of their friendships, okay? They feel outcast, they feel unloved. Rath's massive study on friendship resulted in some surprising statistics. If your best friends eat healthy, you are 5 times more likely to eat healthy yourself and to have a healthy diet yourself. Married people say friendship is 5 times more important than physical intimacy in marriage, okay? Those who say they have no real friends in the workplace have a 1 in 12 chance of feeling engaged and being successful at their job if they don't have a friend at the workplace. But conversely, those who have a best friend at work are 7 times more likely to be engaged in their job and to be successful in their work. Isn't that interesting? But long before there was Tom Rath, long before there was the studies done by Cigna, we know in Scripture that the Bible says you've got to have close friends. You've got to have close friends. You can't live without it, okay? So don't make enemies, make friends. Make as many friends as you can. That's a good thing. But here's the reality. You'll only be able to manage at most 150 friends at a time, okay? It's interesting, they've done these studies and they say you can only really, humanly possible to have contact and to manage and to keep up about 150 friendships at a time. It's interesting that Proverbs echoes this sentiment. In Proverbs 18:24, it says, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." So if everybody's your friend, trust me, you got some enemies in your camp, okay? But if you're wise and if you follow the scriptural precedent and do things God's way, you're going to have the right friends that are going to sustain you throughout your life and are going to make life so meaningful for you. Anyways, we got to move on. Let's look at David's next covenant friend. We see it here in 1 Samuel 18, 20, and 21. Okay, this is the covenant chapter. And it says here, "Now Saul's daughter Michal loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. Saul thought, 'Let me give her to David, that she may be a snare for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him.'" How's that for showing love and dedication to your daughter? You know, it's kind of like not exactly the greatest vote of confidence. Oh yeah, I'll let her marry him, and then she's going to become a snare, and maybe I can take out David indirectly through my own daughter. It says, "Therefore Saul said to David a second time, 'You shall now be my son-in-law,' because David won the battle, and remember, Saul had pledged, whoever wins the battle gets my first daughter, Merab, in marriage. But Merab, David's like, look, I'm just a little pauper. I'm not worthy of marrying. So Merab, Saul's oldest daughter, married someone else. And then the second time this comes around, Saul finds out that his second oldest daughter, I believe, or one of his other daughters, really loved David. And he's like, okay, let's make this happen. I just want to say this, that having the wrong in-laws can be a killer. Just want to say that right now. Okay. I know, it's true. Scratch that from the recording. Just saying, okay? But even in giving away his daughter, Saul was thinking about how he could manipulate the situation for his own gain. You see, I want you to see something. At one point in time, Saul loved David. At one point in time, Saul had David come in to minister to him on a guitar, what was something called a lyre. And it was like a little guitar, and David would worship and minister to God, and it would really help. It was very, very therapeutic for Saul. There was a time when Saul really enjoyed David. Why? Because David was helping him. It was a utilitarian, it was a one-way relationship. Believe me, Saul wasn't doing anything for David. There was nothing happening. It was all give me, give me, give me, give me. But it's interesting to me that Saul's very own son did not learn friendship in that way, but he learned friendship in a more godly, biblical way, which is, how can I give to you without expecting anything back in return? Someone, I have not been able to figure out this. Someone please help me. This is not a rhetorical question. How did Jonathan learn to make such deep, lasting covenant relationships, not having the best examples with his own dad and with his own family? How did he learn it? We know that David had the input of a godly mom and dad. His dad was like an elder in the community of God. We know that David had the input of people like the prophet Samuel and all of the school of the prophets. He also had the input of another prophet by the name of Gad, another prophet by the name of Nathan. So David had all his input, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly, it's not clear from Scripture, how Jonathan got to be such a hero when it comes to covenant friendships. If you find it, let me know. Not right now, but later on. Anyways, getting back to Michal, or Michal as she's pronounced, it says that she loved David and they got married. And the one thing that Saul requested was, King Saul said, if you want to marry her, you got to go out and kill 100 Philistines. David goes out and kills 200 Philistines. And everything David does is just blessed by God. He's got the favor of God on him, and Saul is even more afraid. And 3 times, Saul tries to kill David with his own spear, okay? But here's the thing I want you to see from this. If you blink, you'll miss it. And if you're single here today, I need you right now to hear what I say. This might be some of the most important advice you're ever going to hear about friendship if you're single. You ready? Single people, are you ready?
Ready.
Single people, are you ready? Strange moment here. I'm going to say it one more time. Single people, are you ready? Okay. Before you enter into a covenant friendship with your spouse, learn how to have covenant with God and covenant with another friend first. Please, please. What we do is we've got it all reversed. I don't know how we've done it because we're so advanced and we have all this science and we have all this high tech, but somehow we have fallen and we have relegated friendship to only being with a spouse. And there's so many problems with that. One of the greatest problems is that if your marriage goes through a hard time, and every marriage will, who are you going to go to help encourage you about staying in the marriage? If you've walked away from your covenant friendships, who's going to help you, support you, and pray for you, and encourage you, and be an example for you to stay in that relationship? But David learned things the right way. He developed a relationship first with God. Then he developed a close covenant relationship with Jonathan, which allowed him and provided for him to have a good relationship with his wife, Michal. Okay? And by the way, just a little interesting fact, one of the first things David did when he became king over Israel years later is he says, I want my wife back. For umpteen years, I have been running, I've been on the run, and I want her back. Why was David saying that? Because he needed another spouse? No. He was saying that because he wanted to demonstrate covenant the way that his good friend Jonathan had demonstrated covenant. And he had made a covenant to this woman, Michal, or Michal, however you pronounce it, and he wanted to fulfill that covenant that he had spoken in words to her. Come on, somebody. So please, single person, make sure that you're developing close relationship with Jesus, close relationship with someone, one of Jesus's people, preferably another Christian. That's going to help you as you enter into marriage. But before we end, I've got to make one more major point for everybody, not just for single people here. And let's look at the next passage, and then I'll make the point. In 1 Samuel 20, 1 and 2, it says that then David fled because Saul was chasing him down, trying to take his life. So David fled. And when David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, what have I done? What is my guilt? And what is my sin before your father that he seeks my life? And Jonathan said to him, far from it, you shall not die. Behold, my father does nothing either great or small without disclosing it to me. And why should my father hide this from me? It is not so. What's Jonathan doing? he is encouraging David, saying, look, your life is not, you've got a place to go. You got places to go. You got people to meet. You've got a kingdom to run. And I am committed to making sure that you get to that place. A little bit later in 1 Samuel 20, Jonathan makes another covenant, not just with David, but with David's entire family. So the covenant grows. It expands. But here's the thing I want you to get, and here's the main point that I want everybody here to understand. Jonathan and David's friendship was forged in the furnace of adversity. It didn't happen and grow during easy times. It was actually forged and it was sharpened during the hard times. Has anybody ever seen the TV show Forged in Fire, about how they make different blades? Anybody watch that at all? We got a few people do. I've watched a few episodes. You understand, forging is a long process. It is a painful process. It is something that requires a lot of effort and a lot of skill. And David and Jonathan's friendship was forged in the furnace of adversity. What kind of adversity? Well, David's got people attacking him on all different sides. He's got Amalekites trying to chase him down. He's got Philistines on the other side. He's got Canaanites. He's got giants still after him. Saul is continually suspicious of David, tries to murder him 3 times. David is on the run. David is away from his family. There's all kinds of adversity. In the middle of it, Jonathan keeps it going. Here's what I want to say about that. Most people in our generation, if they were Jonathan, they would have walked out on the friendship with David. That's right. Yeah. Just going to say it. Most of us in this room. You see, it'd be really cool to be a friend of the giant slayer. It's really cool to be a friend of the guy that won the most decisive victory that Israel's ever known. But what about when their reputation goes bad? What about when they go from hero to villain? What about when their reputation is darkened by the clouds of deception and by gossip? And there were very few, let me tell you something, there were very few friends left on the landscape of David's life when everything started going bad for him, when the adversity came. But there was someone that stuck close to David, that kept him alive. And I want to encourage you today, if you want that kind of friendship, then sow that kind of friendship. If you want it in your life, if you're wanting to reap it, then sow it. The reality is that in our lives, we're all going to go through hard times. But we've got to determine that we're going to be the friends, and that our friends are going to go through hard times. We're going to be friends with them even during their hard times. One person said, a true friend, a close friend, a covenant friend is someone who walks in when everybody else is walking out. Harry S. Truman said it this way: friends don't count in fair weather. It is when troubles come that friends really count. What does covenant friendship mean? We were talking about this in our staff meeting. Before we end, let me just give you a few different definitions. Covenant friendship means, as Steve Rogers told Bucky, I'm with you to the end of the line. Amen. The reference there is to being on a subway or on a train to the very end of that train's line. And he was saying, wherever you go, I go. If you get off, I'm getting off. I'm with you through thick and thin. I'm with you to the end of the line. It also means, covenant friendship means, I'm not going to leave you to your own demise. See, we kind of think friendship is just partying together and having fun and not confronting, not dealing with the issues in each other's lives. That's not covenant friendship. See, covenant friendship won't let you saturate in your own sin. See, my covenant friends, when they see me getting a bad attitude or going dark, they will stop me and say, wait, Dave, wait, come on. You're better than this. Covenant friends won't let you dwell in the pit of despair. They won't let you walk down the dark path of depression. They lovingly, truthfully help you out of your self-centeredness, out of your insecurities, out of your fears, out of your ego. Amen? That's covenant friendship. Covenant friendship says, I'm committed to you even when you act and behave in a way that I don't like. See, we unfriend people when they say and do things that we don't like, not covenant friends. Covenant friends don't do that. They say, hey, you know what? They might say, that's them. That's the way they are. I love them nonetheless. That's covenant friendship. And covenant friendship says this, I want you to see the true me, not the false image of me. Man, today in our day and age, we love putting up a false front of who we are. We will post stuff on social media that makes us look better than we really are. But we have an important choice to make. Are we going to impress people, or are we going to focus on having and maintaining genuine friends? Because you can't have both. You can't have both. You have to determine in your heart, you know what? I'm going to allow my closest friends to see the ugly, rough edges of who I am and help me with it and love me in spite of it. And even when they see my ugliest side, they're still going to love me and care for me. So I have a few tips for you. You might want to get your phone out and take a picture of this. This is by doing a lot of reading and research, and I'm condensing down covenant close friendship into 5 keys that you should practice on a regular basis. Number 1, have open, honest dialogue. Open and honest, not fake, phony, not superficial. Number 2, listen well and ask good questions. How are you doing? What's going on? Don't just say, hey, whatever. You know, you've got to, if you want to have a covenant friendship, you've got to ask them what's going on and listen. And it's not rhetorical. It's like, hey, how you doing? Hey, doing good. How you doing? Hey, I'm doing good. How you doing? You actually have to say, hey, you know, I noticed this. I noticed that you were down. What's going on? Thirdly, don't judge, but speak the truth in love. So address the issue. Address the elephant in the room, but do it in a loving, truthful way. 4, be consistent in your friendship efforts. You guys, this is a hard one in today's society. You know, we call people like usually when we need them, when we need something from them. I want to encourage you, covenant friends, you do not do it that way. You're calling them on a regular basis. How you doing? Like I said, you might even show up unannounced, uninvited into their world because you know something's going on and you want to be a part of the friendship process. Number 5, stay in the relationship for the long haul. Don't give up when things do not go well, because Jesus didn't do that with us, and we should not do that with each other. You know, Jesus says, I want you to love each other the way I've loved you. Boy, there's a lot we can say about the love of Jesus, but one thing for sure is Jesus doesn't give up on us when we act less than worthy of that kind of a friendship. And then Jesus says, I want you to love each other the same way I'm doing that. So, as we end, and we're about ready to take communion here, I want to encourage you to pursue covenant friendship. But it starts with a friendship with Jesus. Jesus, right before he was betrayed, right before he went to the cross for his friends, he took the bread and he broke it and he gave thanks. And likewise the cup after they had eaten, saying, this cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. Jesus was establishing, listen to this, this is crazy, guys, if you blink, you'll miss it. He was establishing covenant friendship with every single one of us. You ever felt left out and like, man, I wish I could have them as a friend? You guys, there's no one greater to have as a friend than Jesus in your life. And Jesus says, through my blood, not one drop, but all the blood that I'm shedding, every ounce of it I'm shedding to establish a friendship with you and to bring you back into relationship. Here's God, here's us. We've fallen, we've separated from God. Jesus comes, bridges the gap so that we can be back in a relationship with God. Is anybody thankful for Jesus today? Look at this, the cross, vertical relationship with God, horizontal relationship with others. If you can get the vertical right, if you can learn to receive love and to have a loving covenant friendship with God that's initiated by Jesus, not by us, but by Jesus, then we can begin to have covenant friendship with others and have a covenant marriage. You guys, we live in a day and an age of disposable relationships. And I think if there's anything that separates Christians from those that are not. It should be the depth of our friendships, the depth of our love for each other. How many here want to be a covenant friend of Jesus and others? Raise your hand. Then would you stand with me?